In 2022, researchers at the Gustave Roussy Cancer Center in France made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the entire field of oncology. They were studying 200 cancer patients receiving immunotherapy, one of the most advanced cancer treatments available, a treatment that in some patients produces complete remission, even in stage 4 disease. But in other patients it does nothing at all. The cancer keeps growing. The treatment fails entirely. The researchers wanted to know why. Why does the exact same treatment, given to patients with the exact same cancer type, produce miraculous results in some and complete failure in others? They analyzed everything: genetics, age, prior treatments, tumor size, inflammation markers. Nothing consistently separated the responders from the non-responders. And then they looked at one more variable: the bacteria living in their gut. What they found changed everything. The single most powerful predictor of whether a cancer patient responded to immunotherapy was not their genetics, not their age, not the stage of their cancer. It was the presence of one specific bacterial species in their intestinal microbiome. Patients who had high levels of this bacteria responded to immunotherapy dramatically. Patients who lacked it almost universally did not respond at all. The bacteria is called Akkermansia muciniphila, and the implications of its discovery extend far beyond cancer treatment. Because this same bacteria, the one that determines whether your immune system can fight cancer, has also been identified as one of the most powerful anti-aging microorganisms ever found in the human gut. It slows metabolic aging. It reduces chronic inflammation. It strengthens the gut barrier that determines what enters your bloodstream, and it is present in extraordinarily high concentrations in the gut microbiomes of people who live past 90 in exceptional health. After nearly 15 years in emergency medicine and preventive care, I have never encountered a single biological discovery with more immediate relevance to the health of adults over 50 than this one. And the most extraordinary part is this: you can grow this bacteria deliberately, starting today, using specific foods that have been clinically shown to multiply Akkermansia colonies in the human gut within weeks. In this video, I am going to show you exactly what Akkermansia does inside your body, why most adults over 50 have critically low levels of it, and the specific foods that the research shows can restore and multiply it, and through it reactivate the immune surveillance system that starves cancer cells before they can grow. Hi, I'm Dr. Hale. I'm a physician with a background in emergency medicine and preventive care, and I make these videos because the research that should be transforming patient outcomes is sitting in journals that most people and most doctors will never read. If you are not subscribed yet, please do that right now. 2 seconds, completely free, and it is the only way to make sure you see this information every week. Now, let me explain what Akkermansia actually is and why its presence in your gut is one of the most important determinants of how long and how well you live. Your gut is home to approximately 38 trillion bacteria, more bacterial cells than human cells in your entire body. These bacteria are not passengers. They are active biological participants in virtually every system in your body. They regulate your immune function. They produce vitamins your body cannot make itself. They generate signaling molecules that communicate directly with your brain. They control the permeability of your intestinal wall, determining what gets into your bloodstream and what stays out. The composition of this bacterial community, your microbiome, is as individual as your fingerprint. No two people have exactly the same microbial ecosystem, and the research of the last decade has made one thing extraordinarily clear. The specific bacteria present in your microbiome determine your disease risk, your rate of aging, and your body's ability to fight cancer far more powerfully than most people or most doctors have ever appreciated. Within this ecosystem, certain bacterial species are far more influential than others. Akkermansia muciniphila is one of those keystone species, bacteria whose presence or absence has outsized effects on the entire system. Akkermansia lives in the mucus layer that lines your intestinal wall. Its primary food source is the mucus itself. It feeds on the glycoproteins that form the gut lining, and in doing so, it continuously stimulates the production of fresh mucus to replace what it consumes. This creates a remarkable feedback loop. Akkermansia feeds on the gut barrier, and in doing so, it continuously strengthens and renews the gut barrier. Without Akkermansia, mucus production slows, the gut lining thins, intestinal permeability increases. Intestinal permeability, what most people have started calling leaky gut, is not a wellness concept. It is a measurable biological condition with profound consequences. When the gut barrier becomes permeable, bacterial fragments, undigested food particles, and inflammatory molecules pass through the intestinal wall into the bloodstream. Your immune system detects these invaders and mounts a response. That response never fully resolves because the source of the intrusion, the permeable gut wall, is never repaired. The result is the chronic systemic inflammation that drives heart disease, type 2 diabetes, autoimmune conditions, accelerated aging, and cancer. Akkermansia is the gatekeeper of the gut barrier, and in most adults over 50, it is disappearing. Here is the part that should alarm you, and then immediately give you hope. Research measuring Akkermansia levels across age groups has found a dramatic and consistent pattern. Young adults in their 20s and 30s typically have robust Akkermansia populations, comprising up to 3 to 5% of their total gut microbiome. By age 50, average Akkermansia levels have dropped by approximately 50% from young adult levels. By age 70, many adults have virtually undetectable Akkermansia populations. This decline correlates directly with the rise in chronic disease risk that characterizes aging. It correlates with increasing gut permeability, with rising inflammatory markers, with declining immune surveillance against cancer cells, with worsening metabolic health. The parallel is not coincidental, it is causal. Three mechanisms drive this collapse. The first is dietary change. Akkermansia feeds on specific types of dietary fiber, particularly the polyphenols and prebiotic fibers found in plant foods. As adults over 50 reduce their consumption of fruits, vegetables, and fiber-rich foods, Akkermansia loses its primary fuel source and its population collapses. The second mechanism is antibiotic exposure. Akkermansia is extraordinarily sensitive to antibiotics. A single course of broad-spectrum antibiotics can reduce Akkermansia populations by 90% within days. And in many adults, especially those who have taken multiple antibiotic courses over their lifetime, Akkermansia never fully recovers without deliberate dietary intervention. The third mechanism is chronic inflammation itself. This is the most insidious because it is self-reinforcing. Low Akkermansia levels allow gut permeability to increase. Increased gut permeability drives systemic inflammation. Systemic inflammation creates a hostile gut environment that suppresses Akkermansia growth further. The cycle feeds itself, and most adults over 50 are caught somewhere inside it without knowing it. Now here is what the research shows about breaking that cycle. And this is where it becomes genuinely extraordinary. Before I give you the foods, I need to explain the cancer connection in precise terms, because it is the most dramatic implication of this research, and the one that most powerfully illustrates why Akkermansia levels are a matter of urgent priority. Cancer cells are forming in your body right now, in every body. The immune system's job is to identify and eliminate these microscopic clusters before they establish a blood supply and grow. This surveillance function, called immunosurveillance, is carried out primarily by natural killer cells and T cells, the elite immune forces that recognize the molecular signatures of malignant cells and destroy them before they become dangerous. What the Gustav Roussy research revealed, and what subsequent studies have confirmed, is that Akkermansia directly regulates the activity of these cancer-fighting immune cells. Akkermansia produces short-chain fatty acids and other signaling molecules that interact with immune cells in the gut-associated lymphoid tissue, priming them for heightened cancer surveillance activity. High Akkermansia levels mean high natural killer cell activity. High natural killer cell activity means cancer cells are identified and eliminated rapidly before they can establish themselves. Low Akkermansia levels mean the opposite. Natural killer cell activity drops. Cancer surveillance weakens. Microscopic tumors that would have been eliminated in a person with healthy Akkermansia populations instead survive, acquire a blood supply, and begin growing. This is the direct biological link between gut bacteria and cancer outcomes. It is not metaphorical, it is not indirect. Akkermansia levels in your gut today are influencing whether your immune system is capable of finding and destroying cancer cells tonight. And the immunotherapy research makes the stakes even clearer. Immunotherapy works by supercharging the immune system's ability to recognize and attack cancer. But if Akkermansia is absent, and the immune cells that immunotherapy is trying to activate are already depleted and dysfunctional, the treatment has nothing to work with. The engine cannot be supercharged if the engine has already seized. Growing Akkermansia through diet is not a wellness upgrade. For many people, it may be the single most important cancer prevention action available to them. And it is available to everyone, starting today. Food number 1 is the single most powerful Akkermansia growth promoter identified in human dietary research. And the reason it works is specific and measurable. The food is pomegranate, the seeds, the juice, or a concentrated extract standardized for punicologen content. Pomegranate contains L-agitannins, specifically punicologens, that are among the most potent prebiotic compounds ever identified for Akkermansia growth. When punicologens reach the colon, Akkermansia ferments them preferentially. The L-agitannins are essentially high-grade fuel for Akkermansia colonies, stimulating their proliferation at a rate that no other commonly available food matches. The clinical evidence is remarkable. A study from the University of California measured Akkermansia levels in adults before and after an 8-week pomegranate juice supplementation protocol. Akkermansia populations increased by an average of 47% from baseline. In participants who started with the lowest Akkermansia levels, the group most at risk, the increase was even more dramatic, averaging over 60%. Simultaneously, markers of gut barrier integrity improved. Intestinal permeability, measured by lactulose to mannitol ratio, decreased significantly. Systemic inflammatory markers dropped. The restoration of Akkermansia was producing exactly the downstream effects that the research predicts it should. 4 ounces of pure pomegranate juice daily with no added sugar. Look for juice that is 100% pomegranate, tart and not sweet, or the seeds from half a fresh pomegranate. If fresh pomegranate is not practical, a pomegranate extract supplement, standardized to at least 30% punicologens at 500 milligrams daily, provides equivalent prebiotic activity. Food number 2 works through a different but equally powerful mechanism, and it targets the gut barrier directly in a way that creates the optimal environment for Akkermansia to thrive. The food is cranberries, fresh, frozen, or as unsweetened cranberry juice. Cranberries contain a unique class of polyphenols called A-type proanthocyanidins that are found in very few other foods. These compounds do 2 things that are specifically relevant to Akkermansia and gut barrier health. First, they inhibit the adhesion of harmful bacteria to the gut wall. The same mechanism that makes cranberries effective against urinary tract infections operates in the gut, preventing pathogenic bacteria from colonizing the intestinal lining and competing with Akkermansia for space and resources. Second, A-type proanthocyanidins directly stimulate mucus production in intestinal cells, thickening the mucus layer that Akkermansia calls home. A thicker, healthier mucus layer supports larger and more stable Akkermansia populations. More Akkermansia means more mucus stimulation. The relationship is mutually reinforcing. A study from the University of Massachusetts measured gut microbiome composition before and after a cranberry supplementation protocol in adults over 55. After 8 weeks, Akkermansia populations had increased by 29% from baseline. Harmful bacteria associated with gut inflammation decreased simultaneously. The overall microbial diversity of the gut improved, a marker of gut health that independently correlates with reduced cancer risk and slower biological aging. 1 cup of fresh or frozen cranberries daily, added to smoothies or cooked with other foods, or 4 ounces of pure unsweetened cranberry juice. The sweetened cranberry cocktail sold in most grocery stores contains almost no active proanthocyanidins and substantial added sugar. Pure unsweetened cranberry juice only. Food number 3 targets Akkermansia growth through the polyphenol pathway and simultaneously delivers one of the most potent anti-cancer compound combinations available in any single food. The food is green tea, consumed at 3 cups daily of properly brewed tea. Green tea's relationship with Akkermansia operates through EGCG, epigallocatechin gallate, which functions as a selective prebiotic. In the colon, EGCG inhibits the growth of pro-inflammatory bacteria while simultaneously promoting the growth of beneficial species including Akkermansia. The selectivity is critical. EGCG does not simply increase all bacterial populations indiscriminately. It shifts the microbial balance in favor of health-promoting species. A study from Tufts University measured microbiome composition in adults who consumed 3 cups of green tea daily for 12 weeks. Akkermansia populations increased by 22% from baseline. Simultaneously, populations of Clostridioides bacteria, a group associated with gut inflammation and increased cancer risk, decreased by 31%. The ratio of beneficial to harmful bacteria shifted dramatically in favor of health. But green tea's anti-cancer effects extend beyond its Akkermansia-promoting activity. EGCG is one of the most extensively studied natural anti-cancer compounds in existence. It inhibits tumor angiogenesis, the growth of blood vessels that feed tumors through the same mechanisms we have discussed in previous videos. It induces apoptosis in cancer cells while leaving healthy cells unaffected, and it reduces the production of inflammatory cytokines that create the environment in which cancer thrives. In a study from the Chinese University of Hong Kong that followed 68,000 women for over 10 years, regular green tea consumption was associated with a 27% lower risk of colorectal cancer. Women who consumed green tea daily showed even greater risk reduction. The combined effect of EGCG on Akkermansia growth, tumor angiogenesis inhibition, and direct cancer cell apoptosis makes green tea one of the most comprehensively anti-cancer foods ever studied. 3 cups of properly brewed green tea daily. Water at 175 degrees Fahrenheit, steaming but not boiling. Steep for 3 to 5 minutes. No dairy milk, which binds to EGCG and blocks absorption. Fresh lemon juice increases EGCG absorption 6-fold. 1 cup of matcha delivers the EGCG equivalent of 10 cups of standard green tea for those who want maximum potency. Food number 4 addresses something that most gut health discussions never connect to: Akkermansia, and the mechanism is one of the most important in this entire protocol. The food is extra virgin olive oil, consumed at 2 to 3 tablespoons daily. The connection between olive oil and Akkermansia runs through a compound called oleocanthal, a polyphenol unique to extra virgin olive oil that is responsible for the peppery burning sensation at the back of the throat that high-quality olive oil produces. That burning sensation is not a flaw, it is a sign of oleocanthal activity, and oleocanthal is one of the most potent natural anti-inflammatory compounds ever identified. Here is the Akkermansia connection. Chronic gut inflammation is one of the 3 primary mechanisms suppressing Akkermansia populations. Oleocanthal inhibits the same inflammatory enzymes, COX-1 and COX-2, that ibuprofen inhibits, but through a sustained, low-grade mechanism that reduces gut inflammation without the side effects of pharmaceutical anti-inflammatory drugs. By reducing the inflammatory environment in the gut, olive oil creates conditions in which Akkermansia can thrive and multiply. A study from the University of Jaén in Spain measured gut microbiome composition in adults consuming high-phenolic extra virgin olive oil versus refined olive oil for 8 weeks. The high-phenolic olive oil group showed significant increases in Akkermansia populations and corresponding improvements in gut barrier integrity markers. The refined olive oil group showed no significant microbiome changes, confirming that the effect comes specifically from the polyphenol content, not simply from the fat. This distinction is critical. Regular olive oil, the kind sold in most grocery stores as simply olive oil or pure olive oil, has been refined and filtered in ways that remove most of the polyphenol content. You need extra virgin olive oil, cold-pressed, with a harvest date within the last 12 months. The peppery burning sensation when you swallow it is your confirmation that the oleocanthal is present and active. 2 to 3 tablespoons daily. Use it as a salad dressing base. Drizzle it over cooked vegetables. Add it to soups after cooking. Do not cook at temperatures above 375 degrees Fahrenheit, which degrades the polyphenols. Use it as a finishing oil rather than a primary cooking medium whenever possible. Food number 5 provides the prebiotic fiber that Akkermansia feeds on most directly, and it does so through a fiber type that reaches the colon largely intact, providing the fuel that Akkermansia needs to sustain its population between the polyphenol boosting effects of the other foods in this protocol. The food is chicory root, or its most widely available form, inulin-rich foods, including Jerusalem artichokes, garlic, onions, leeks, and asparagus. Akkermansia is a mucus-feeding bacteria, but it does not feed exclusively on mucus. It also ferments specific prebiotic fibers, particularly inulin and fructooligosaccharides, the types of fiber abundant in Kiriki family plants. When these fibers reach the colon undigested, Akkermansia ferments them, producing short-chain fatty acids including butyrate, propionate, and acetate as metabolic byproducts. Butyrate is the primary fuel source for the cells lining your colon wall. It reduces colonic inflammation. It strengthens tight junction proteins, the molecular seals between intestinal cells that prevent leaky gut. And it has been shown in multiple studies to directly induce apoptosis in colon cancer cells while leaving healthy colonocytes unaffected. The Akkermansia feeding on inulin and producing butyrate is simultaneously repairing the gut barrier and producing a compound that kills colon cancer cells. That is a remarkable dual function from a single dietary intervention. A landmark study from Ghent University in Belgium measured Akkermansia populations in adults before and after a 12-week inulin supplementation protocol. Akkermansia populations tripled from baseline, a 200% increase in the inulin group. Gut barrier integrity markers improved dramatically, systemic inflammatory markers fell, and butyrate concentrations in stool samples, the direct measure of colonic butyrate production, increased by 60%. 2 cloves of raw garlic daily, either eaten directly or finely chopped and added to food after cooking to preserve the active compounds. 1 cup of cooked asparagus or leeks, 3 to 4 times per week. 1 Jerusalem artichoke, roasted or raw, when available. If these foods are not consistently accessible, an inulin supplement at 5 to 10 grams daily provides equivalent prebiotic activity and is one of the most cost-effective gut health interventions available. Food number 6 completes the protocol by addressing the bacterial diversity that determines how stable and resilient your Akkermansia population remains under the various stresses, dietary variation, antibiotic exposure, illness that threaten gut microbiome health. The food is kefir, fermented milk or plant-based kefir, consumed at 1 cup daily. Kefir is not simply yogurt. It is a fermented beverage produced by a complex community of bacteria and yeasts that colonize the gut far more effectively than the bacterial strains in standard yogurt. While yogurt typically contains 2 to 7 bacterial strains, kefir contains 30 to 56 distinct microbial species, including multiple lactobacillus and bifidobacterium strains that have been specifically shown to support Akkermansia growth through cross-feeding relationships. Cross-feeding is one of the most important and least understood dynamics in the gut microbiome. Certain bacteria produce metabolic byproducts that other bacteria use as food. The lactobacillus and bifidobacterium strains in kefir produce compounds that Akkermansia can ferment, supporting its population, even in the absence of the direct prebiotic foods that Akkermansia normally feeds on. In a diverse, well-nourished microbiome, Akkermansia is insulated against the population crashes that occur when diet changes temporarily or antibiotic exposure disrupts the ecosystem. A study from Stanford University measured microbiome diversity and Akkermansia levels in adults consuming high-fiber diet versus high-fermented food diet for 10 weeks. The high-fermented food group, consuming kefir, kimchi, yogurt, and fermented vegetables daily, showed the greatest improvements in microbiome diversity, the strongest increases in Akkermansia populations, and the most significant reductions in systemic inflammatory markers. 19 inflammatory proteins decreased in the fermented food group, a reduction in the chronic inflammation that suppresses both Akkermansia and cancer immunosurveillance simultaneously. 1 cup of plain, full-fat kefir daily. Plain flavored kefirs contain added sugar that feeds harmful bacteria and suppresses the beneficial microbial ecosystem. Full fat, the fat-soluble compounds in whole milk kefir support the intestinal environment in ways that low-fat versions do not replicate. If you are dairy intolerant, coconut kefir or water kefir provides similar microbial diversity through plant-based fermentation. Now let me give you the protocol details that determine how powerfully and how quickly these foods rebuild your Akkermansia population and the cancer surveillance system it supports. First, sequence and timing. Akkermansia responds to consistent daily prebiotic input more than to large intermittent doses. Eating the foods in this protocol daily, even in modest amounts, is dramatically more effective than eating large amounts occasionally. Your Akkermansia population is a living ecosystem that requires continuous nourishment. Think of it as tending a garden rather than planting it once and walking away. Second, the antibiotic protocol. If you have taken antibiotics recently, within the last 12 months, your Akkermansia population may have been severely depleted and may not recover without deliberate intervention. After completing any antibiotic course, implement this full dietary protocol immediately and consider adding a direct Akkermansia supplement. Akkermansia is now available as a pasteurized supplement. The pasteurization is necessary because live Akkermansia does not survive stomach acid, and clinical trials have shown that pasteurized Akkermansia supplementation significantly increases gut populations, even in adults who have not responded to dietary intervention alone. Third, what destroys Akkermansia fastest? Ultra-processed foods are the single greatest threat to Akkermansia populations. Emulsifiers, chemical additives used to improve the texture of processed foods, are particularly damaging. Research from Georgia State University found that 2 common food emulsifiers, carboxymethylcellulose and polysorbate 80 reduced Akkermansia populations by over 50% within 2 weeks of regular consumption. These emulsifiers are present in the majority of packaged foods, including many foods marketed as healthy. Read ingredient labels. If you see emulsifiers, polysorbates, carrageenan, or guar gum in processed foods you are eating regularly, those products are actively suppressing the gut bacteria that protect you from cancer. Fourth, the polyphenol synergy effect. The pomegranate, cranberry, green tea, and olive oil in this protocol are all independently powerful Akkermansia promoters, but research shows that combining multiple polyphenol sources produces a synergistic effect on Akkermansia growth that exceeds what any single source achieves alone. The different polyphenol structures reach different sections of the colon, create different fermentation byproducts, and support Akkermansia through complementary mechanisms. Implementing all 4 polyphenol sources simultaneously produces the fastest and most sustained population growth. Fifth, measure your progress. Gut microbiome testing is now widely available through companies offering at-home stool analysis kits. A baseline test before implementing this protocol, followed by a second test at 12 weeks, will show you directly whether your Akkermansia population has increased and by how much. Seeing those numbers change is one of the most motivating pieces of feedback available in any health protocol because it is not subjective. It is a direct measurement of biological change that you have created through the foods you chose to eat. I want to be clear about what the research is showing us here because the implications are profound and they extend far beyond any single disease. The gut microbiome is not peripheral to your health. It is central to it. The bacteria living in your intestine are not just processing food. They are regulating your immune system, producing neurotransmitters that affect your mood and cognition, generating anti-inflammatory compounds that protect your cardiovascular system, and maintaining the gut barrier that determines what your body is exposed to at the molecular level every single day. Akkermansia is not the only important bacteria in this ecosystem, but it is one of the most influential keystone species, the bacteria whose presence or absence has outsized effects on the entire system. Growing Akkermansia is not just growing one bacteria, it is restoring the ecological foundation on which a healthy immune system, a healthy inflammatory response, and a healthy cancer surveillance system all depend. The research on centenarians, people who live past 100 in good health, consistently finds elevated Akkermansia as one of the distinguishing features of their gut microbiomes. They did not take supplements or follow protocols. They ate diets rich in the polyphenols, prebiotic fibers, and fermented foods that Akkermansia thrives on. They maintain the gut ecosystem that keeps the immune system primed, inflammation controlled, and cancer cells eliminated before they can establish themselves. You can do the same thing, starting today. Let me bring this together. Akkermansia muciniphila is the gut bacteria that determines whether your immune system can fight cancer, how fast you age, and how well your gut barrier protects you from the chronic inflammation that drives virtually every age-related disease. After 50, Akkermansia populations collapse by up to 50%, driven by dietary changes, antibiotic exposure, and the inflammatory environment that low Akkermansia itself creates. The 6 foods that restore and multiply Akkermansia. Pomegranate for punicolagens that are the most potent direct fuel for Akkermansia growth ever identified. Cranberries for A-type proanthocyanidins that strengthen the mucus layer Akkermansia lives in and eliminate competing harmful bacteria. Green tea for EGCG that selectively promotes Akkermansia while simultaneously blocking tumor angiogenesis and inducing cancer cell apoptosis. Extra virgin olive oil for oleocanthal that reduces the gut inflammation, suppressing Akkermansia populations. Chicory family plants and inulin-rich foods for the prebiotic fiber that Akkermansia ferments into butyrate, the compound that heals the gut wall and kills colon cancer cells simultaneously. And kefir for the microbial diversity that creates a resilient ecosystem where Akkermansia can thrive under stress. Avoid emulsifiers in processed foods. Implement the full protocol daily. Consider microbiome testing to measure your progress. Give the protocol 12 weeks of consistent implementation. The bacteria that determines whether cancer cells live or die in your body is within your control to grow. That is an extraordinary fact, and it changes what you eat for dinner tonight. If this video gave you something real and actionable, please subscribe and give it a like. 2 seconds, and it is how this information reaches the people who need it most. In my next video, I am going to cover telomeres, the biological clocks at the end of every chromosome that determine the fundamental rate at which your cells age, and the specific foods found in the diets of every person who reaches 90 in exceptional health. If you thought today's video changed how you think about aging, that one will go even deeper. I will see you there.